"Sir, why does my mom smile when she's hurt? She says pain is cheaper than medicine." The automatic doors of the pharmacy slid open with a tired sigh, letting in a gust of winter air and a handful of snowflakes that melted instantly under the bright fluorescent lights. Shelves stretched in neat rows like quiet soldiers. Boxes, bottles, labels, instructions. Everything was clean. Everything was organized. Everything cost something. The smell was familiar. Antiseptic, cold air, and the faint trace of coffee from the convenience store next door. A small girl sat on one of the plastic chairs near the wall. Her legs didn't reach the floor, so her shoes swung slightly, heels brushing the metal leg of the chair with a soft, repetitive tap. She held a wool hat in her hands. It was old, stretched at the edges, but carefully washed, like someone had tried to give it a second life. Her eyes kept drifting to the counter. Her mother stood there. The woman wasn't dramatic in her pain. She didn't groan. She didn't hold herself like a tragic figure in a play. She simply moved carefully, like every small gesture had weight. Her right arm was wrapped tightly from shoulder to elbow under her coat, the kind of stiffness that tells you the body is protecting itself. The pharmacist read the screen, then read it again, then turned the monitor slightly away, as though the number on it was something the air shouldn't see. He spoke politely, too politely, the kind of politeness that grows in places where bad news is given 100 times a day. The woman nodded. She didn't argue. She didn't beg. She didn't cry. She just smiled. That small, tired, practiced smile. The one people wear when they are trying to make someone else comfortable with their suffering. The one that says, "It's fine. Eva handled vers." She reached into her wallet. There wasn't much inside. Some folded bills that had clearly been folded and unfolded too many times. A few coins, a bus ticket, a faded photo of the girl on the chair when she was younger, missing 2 front teeth and wearing the same wool hat. The woman counted. Then she counted again silently. The pharmacist looked away for a second, not because he didn't care, but because he cared in the limited way people learn to care when they see pain every day and can't always solve it. The price did not change while she counted. Numbers rarely do. The woman inhaled slowly. Then she slid the prescription paper back across the counter with gentle fingers, as if it were something fragile, something alive. "It's okay," she said softly. "I'll manage without it." The pharmacist hesitated. He opened his mouth like he might say something, anything, but he closed it instead. Policies were policies. Systems were systems. His hands moved to the next patient. The little girl didn't move. She watched. She saw everything that adults think children miss. Her mother turned. That same tired smile pinned carefully in place like a brooch she didn't remember choosing. She walked toward the chairs, boot heels clicking quietly across the tiles. The girl spoke before the woman even sat down. "Does it hurt?" Her mother laughed lightly, not because it was funny, because laughing is easier than explaining. "It's nothing," she said, brushing a loose strand of hair back with her good hand. "Just a little uncomfortable." The girl stared at the wrapped arm, at the stiffness in her movements, at the way she held her breath every time she shifted positions. The girl had seen scraped knees. She had seen paper cuts. This was not that. The mother noticed her daughter's eyes, so she smiled again. That same soft, bright, practiced lie. "It's cheaper to hurt a little," she said gently, "than to buy medicine we can't afford." The words didn't tremble. They landed like snow on concrete, quiet, but they stayed. Standing a few steps away in line, a man in a dark wool coat paused. He hadn't meant to listen. He had simply heard. He looked like someone who didn't wait in lines very often. Tall, calm, with the relaxed posture of a person used to rooms opening when he arrived. His gloves were leather. His shoes didn't squeak when he walked. His scarf was the type that didn't fray at the ends. He didn't know why, but his attention refused to move on. The girl's fingers tightened on the wool hat. She swallowed once, as if pushing down something too big for her small throat. She turned her head toward the man in the coat. Not because of the brand, not because of the shine, but because he was the closest person who looked like he had time to listen. Her voice was steady. "Sir." He looked down. Her eyes were not begging. They were simply honest. "Sir, why does my mom smile when she's hurt?" She turned her head slightly toward the woman with the bandaged arm. "She says pain is cheaper than medicine." The pharmacy buzzed around them. Scanners beeped. Receipts printed. Plastic bags rustled. But between the man and the girl, a strange quiet settled, as if the world had respectfully stepped aside. He didn't answer immediately. Powerful men get used to solving problems quickly, buying things, calling people, making arrangements. But this question didn't belong to that category. It wasn't about logistics. It was about dignity. He followed the girl's gaze. The woman was staring at the row of vitamin bottles with a look that wasn't really about vitamins. Something like calculation, something like apology to herself, something like exhaustion grown into habit. The man took a slight step closer. "May I sit?" he asked gently. The girl nodded. He lowered himself onto the chair beside her, the coat folding neatly around him, his gloved hands resting lightly on his knees as if he were afraid of taking up too much space. He spoke without leaning in, without intruding. "What's your name?" "Lena," she answered softly. He nodded. "I'm Daniel." She nodded back politely, like a tiny adult. They both looked ahead. He didn't ask what happened to her mother's arm. He didn't ask why they couldn't pay. He didn't ask for the backstory of her life like paperwork at a clinic. Instead, he said quietly, "Sometimes grown-ups smile when they're hurt so their children won't worry." Lena shook her head. "She smiles so the world won't worry," she whispered. "She doesn't care if I see it. She just doesn't want to bother anyone." That sentence landed differently. He glanced at her mother again. She was rubbing her good hand over her face slowly, like trying to erase the day. She pressed her fingers into her temples for a second and then immediately straightened. The instant posture shift of someone trained to hide pain before anyone labels it weakness. "Does she do that often?" he asked softly. The girl nodded. "When she gets headaches, or when her back hurts, or when she comes home late and her hands are shaking. She laughs and says it's nothing." The girl swallowed. "But sometimes when she thinks I'm asleep, she doesn't laugh." The man felt something in his chest tighten. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a quiet knot forming as if the truth had hands. Across the room, the automatic doors sighed again as someone else came in from the cold. A bell jingled faintly. A poster on the wall declared in bright, cheerful letters, "Health is a choice." He almost laughed at that. He watched as Lena's mother rose slowly from the chair and walked toward the exit, shoulders squared, coat wrapped carefully around her injured arm. No prescription bag, no bottle, no crinkling plastic, just winter waiting outside. Lena slid off the chair. She didn't rush after her mother immediately. She looked back at Daniel. "Thank you for listening," she said politely. Not dramatic, not emotional, simply sincere. He nodded once. She turned to go. He stood too fast. "Wait." She stopped. He hesitated. There are moments in life when large decisions feel as small as taking one step forward and small decisions feel as heavy as lifting mountains. He stepped forward, not toward the girl, but toward her mother. He didn't call out loudly. He didn't chase. He simply walked. The woman turned when she felt someone near her. Not defensively, just tiredly. "Yes?" she asked. His voice was calm. "May I ask one thing?" She blinked. Of course. He gestured slightly toward her arm. Does it hurt? She smiled reflexively, the same small, careful smile that cracked something inside the girl earlier. It's fine, she said. Pain is free. He didn't smile back. He didn't argue. He simply stood there for a long, quiet moment, as if absorbing the reality of a world where that sentence could exist without irony. And that was how the night began to change. The city didn't change overnight. Nothing snapped. Nothing exploded. Life simply continued the way winter does. Slow, quiet, persistent. But something inside three people had shifted. A man who had too much, a woman who had too little, and a girl who noticed everything. The morning after, Mara woke before the alarm. She always did. Her eyes opened to the same things they always saw: the cracked wallpaper, the pale morning light sneaking through thin curtains, the radiator making that tired metallic sigh like it was just as exhausted as everyone else. But there was one difference. Her shoulder didn't scream, still hurt, but not like before, not like a knife, more like a bruise whispering instead of shouting. She lay there longer than usual, not because she was lazy, but because for the first time in months, she wasn't forced out of bed by pain. Lena slept curled up beside her, one hand resting on her mother's sleeve like she was making sure she wouldn't disappear. Mara watched her. Kids don't sleep deeply when they grow up inside stress. They wait even when they dream. She brushed a loose hair from the girl's forehead. Then the familiar voice inside returned. Get up. There's work. There's always work. She moved slowly to the kitchen. The kettle was old, metal scraped thin from years of heating just enough water, never wasting electricity. When she poured, the steam rose in a gentle cloud. She looked at the orange bottle. Still there, still real. She whispered to nobody, "Thank you." Not to Daniel, not to luck, to the quiet fact. She didn't have to be strong in pain again today. Strength with pain looks heroic. Strength without pain looks invisible. People clap for one and ignore the other. She took another pill, not with guilt this time, with intention. Across the city, Daniel also woke early. He always did. He lived in a penthouse with big windows that turned the city into a postcard. Most mornings that view made him feel powerful. Today, it made him feel responsible. He stood there with his coffee, watching the city breathe, buses moving, bakeries setting out bread, people bundled up walking quickly because winter had no patience. He saw movement but thought about faces, the pharmacist pretending the rules were enough, the posters that blamed people for being poor, the girl gripping her hat, the woman who said, "Apologies are free," like pain. He opened his laptop. Not news, not markets, not emails. He opened something else, the internal employee portal for the clinics he invested in. Complaint tickets, notes, incident reports. He had never read these. He paid people to read them for him. But today he scrolled. Patient refused medication due to cost. Mother crying at counter. Man fainted after skipping treatment. Woman reports choosing rent over refill. Line after line, different names, same story. He hadn't created the system, but he had profited from it. And when you profit from something long enough, eventually you stop seeing the damage as damage. You start calling it unfortunate reality. He closed the page, then reopened it. He forced himself to read every line, not as data, as lives. School day. Lena walked quietly beside her mother. Snow crunched. Cars passed with soft, wet hisses. She looked at Mara's arm with small, serious eyes. "Does it still hurt?" she asked. "Yes," Mara said honestly, "but not like yesterday." Lena nodded. She didn't smile fully. Children like her never celebrate too fast. but something in her face softened. At school, the classroom buzzed with December talk. Christmas tree. Grandma's coming. We're going skiing. The teacher taped a green paper tree on the board. Today, she said brightly, we write letters. What Christmas means to us. Kids scribbled fast. Toys, trips, dinners, lights. Lena stared at the paper. Her pencil hovered. Finally, she wrote, Christmas means pretending everything is okay so Mom doesn't worry. She didn't show the teacher. She folded the paper carefully and put it in her pocket. Some truths feel too big for classrooms. Night shift. That evening, Mara stood in the office building lobby. Mop bucket, gloves, a smell of cheap disinfectant. Her coworker, Olga, older, practical, always chewing gum, glanced at her shoulder. You good? Mara nodded. Better. Olga squinted. You finally took something? Mara hesitated. Yes. Olga smirked. Good. Strong women are idiots. Smart women take meds. Mara almost laughed. They worked in silence for a while. Empty offices tell the truth about companies. During the day, they are loud and confident. At night, with the chairs pushed in and screens black, they look fragile, like the whole world is made of paper. Mara wiped a desk covered in motivational posters. Winners never quit. Pain means progress. She stared at the words. Liars. Her shoulder throbbed a little but didn't scream. She whispered under her breath, pain just means pain, and kept cleaning. Meanwhile, boardroom. Daniel stood at the head of a long table the next day. Executives, lawyers, shareholders, perfect suits. Projected slides glowed behind him. Numbers everywhere. Someone finished speaking, which is why lowering margins threatens future growth. Murmurs, nods, agreement. Daniel didn't argue. He walked to the window. Can I ask something? He said quietly. People hate when powerful men sound soft. It means something dangerous is coming. He turned. How many of you, he asked, have ever stood in a pharmacy and chosen not to buy medicine because it was too expensive? Silence. One man shifted uncomfortably. Nobody raised a hand. He nodded. That's the problem. A woman cleared her throat. Compassion is admirable, she said. But we run businesses. Daniel smiled faintly. We pretend they run themselves, he said. But they don't. They run on decisions, ours. And people live inside those decisions. He pointed gently at the charts. These, he said, are lives written in math. He didn't yell. He didn't threaten. He simply refused to look away. And something in the room, not big, not loud, loosened, not agreement, not victory, but doubt. And doubt in the right place is often the beginning of change. Another night. A week passed. Snow deepened. The city slowed. Mara's arm still hurt, but she worked. She moved carefully. She rested when she could. She took the medicine when she needed to. Shame faded. Not gone, just quieter. Lena watched everything. One evening she spoke softly. Mom. Yes. Do rich people know when something is unfair? Mara thought. Some do, she said. Some pretend not to. Some don't want to see. Lena nodded thoughtfully. Daniel sees. Mara hesitated. He paid once, she said. That doesn't make him different. But inside, she wasn't sure. The collision. 3 weeks later, the story closed its circle. Mara sat in the clinic waiting room. Not desperate this time. Not panicking. Just waiting for a follow-up. Lena colored quietly beside her. The nurse called her name. Mara. They stood. And as they walked down the hallway, Daniel turned the corner. They stopped at the same time. Recognition. Not dramatic. Just human. You, Mara said softly. You, Daniel replied. Lena smiled. He nodded at the sling. How's the shoulder? Better, she said simply. He exhaled, not relief for himself, relief that the world, for once, had not taken another piece from someone who already had so little. She studied him. You look tired, she said. He laughed softly. I've been arguing with rich people, he said. It's exhausting. She smiled. For once, he added gently, I think I might be losing in the right direction. She didn't fully understand. She didn't need to. Lena tugged her sleeve. Mom, are we going in? Yes, Mara said. She looked at Daniel. Thank you, she said. And this time it wasn't humiliation. It was acknowledgement. Not, you saved us, but you saw us. He nodded. Take care of that shoulder, he said. And you, she replied. Take care of that heart. It finally started working. He laughed quietly. She disappeared into the exam room, and Daniel stood in the hallway for a long time, staring at a wall sign that read, Patient care first. For the first time, it wasn't ironic. It was a direction. Something had started. Not loudly, not perfectly, but honestly. And sometimes honesty is enough to tilt the world a few degrees. Winter didn't end. It softened. That was all. Snow turned from knives to feathers. The wind kept blowing, but it stopped feeling personal. Time passed the way time always does, not in big leaps, but in small, ordinary days that no one posts about. And somewhere between those days, 3 lives kept circling the same quiet question. What do we owe each other when nobody is watching? Months later, the pharmacy changed first. Not on the outside. The sign was the same. The bell on the door still made that cheap metallic ring. The posters still smiled too hard. But behind the counter, small things shifted. The pay first sign came down. In its place, a new notice appeared in simple black letters. If you have questions about cost, please ask. You are not a problem. The pharmacist who once told Mara to apologize for crying was still there. Only now, there was a sticky note taped near her screen. Remember, numbers are systems. People are not. Nobody saw who wrote it, but she stopped saying, those are the rules, as if they had been carved into stone. She started saying, let me see what we can do. It was a small difference. It was everything. The quiet pilot. Daniel didn't overhaul the healthcare system overnight. He couldn't. He wasn't a magician. He was just a man with power finally pointed somewhere useful. He started with one thing, a pilot program across a few clinics and pharmacies. No press release, no cameras, no huge charity event. Just a new internal policy. For essential pain medication and necessary ongoing treatments, if cost prevents access, staff may apply an automatic reduction or defer payment. No extra forms. No humiliation at the counter. There were conditions, controls, spreadsheets, of course. But there was also a rule that didn't make it into documents. No one walks away in agony because they are poor. Managers argued. Accountants worried. Lawyers frowned. Daniel listened to all of them. Then he said quietly, people in pain don't care about margins. They care about breathing. We'll find the balance on our side of the counter, not on theirs. They didn't cheer. They didn't clap. But they tried. And trying was new. Mara's world. Mara's life did not turn into a success story. There was no lottery. No distant relative leaving her a house. No sudden promotion to some glamorous job. She still cleaned offices at night. She still checked prices at the supermarket and put some things back. But something changed. Her shoulder healed enough that she could lift her arm without wincing. Not in a movie miracle way. In a real way. Some mornings it hurt. On cold, damp days, it throbbed. But pain no longer sat in the center of her life like an unwanted guest at the table. It moved to the edge. Something else moved to the middle space. Very small, but very real. The second visit. One rainy afternoon, Mara went back to the pharmacy. Not desperate this time, just cautious. She approached the counter, fingers clenched around her prescription slip like it might accuse her. The same pharmacist looked up. There was a brief flash of recognition. Mara braced herself. The woman didn't sigh, didn't judge. "Hello," she said evenly. "Back for a refill?" "Yes," Mara answered, forcing her voice not to shrink. "But she swallowed. "I may not be able to pay everything today." The familiar shame rushed up like a reflex. But before it could choke her, the pharmacist nodded calmly. "We have a new assistance program," she said, "for pain medications. It reduces the cost if it's a financial hardship. No extra interviews, no proof of suffering." She said it so matter-of-factly it almost sounded normal. Mara stared. "How much will it be?" she whispered. The pharmacist tapped a few keys, authorized a reduction with a quiet beep. The number she read out was still not small, but it was possible, survivable. Mara exhaled, a breath that felt like it had been waiting in her chest for months. "Thank you," she said, and this time it did not taste like humiliation, tasted like dignity. The pharmacist hesitated. "About last time," she said softly. "When I said what I said." Mara's heart kicked. The woman looked down, embarrassed in a way Mara had never seen. "We had a training," she admitted, "about language, about empathy, about everything. I realized I was protecting rules instead of people." She looked up. "I'm sorry." Not a customer service sorry, not a robotic phrase, a real one. Mara nodded slowly. "I know what it's like," she said quietly, "to follow rules because you're afraid of losing your job." They looked at each other, not as enemies, as two women trapped in different corners of the same cage. The pharmacist smiled, small and tired. "Maybe," she said, "we can start changing the cage." Mara left with the bottle in her bag. Same orange plastic. New weight. Not heavy. Important. Lena's Christmas page. At school, December came back around like it always does. Same lights. Same paper snowflakes. Same assignment. Write what you wish for this year. Last year, Lena had written something she never showed. This year, she didn't hesitate as long. Her pencil moved slowly, carefully. "I wish my mom could rest without feeling guilty. I wish people would see her even when she's not cleaning something." She paused, then added, "I wish rich people would fix the things they built by accident." She stared at the words. They felt too big to hand in. She folded the paper and kept 2 copies, one to turn in, one to keep. Children who have seen too much learn to archive their own hearts. Daniel in the waiting room. Some evenings, Daniel visited clinics in person. Not announced, not escorted, just there. He would sit in the waiting room with a book he barely read, listening more than watching. He heard things spreadsheets never captured. "I'll try to stretch it until next month. It's fine, I've had worse pain. Don't worry, I can handle it." The same sentences spoken by different mouths. He noticed every time someone flinched when asked for payment. Every time someone said, "It's okay, I'll manage without." He kept a notebook, not with names, with patterns. After one long night of listening, he wrote only one line. "People are not refusing care. They're refusing to be humiliated." The next day, he added a new training module: how to offer help without stripping someone's pride. It wasn't perfect, But it was something. A small promotion. Mara's supervisor at the cleaning company was not a kind man. He wasn't cruel either. He was what most people are. Busy, distracted, used to things the way they've always been. He called her into the office one Friday. Her stomach dropped. People like her don't get summoned for good news. She stood in front of his desk, hands fisted inside her sleeves. "We've had some feedback," he said. She prepared for the worst. "From tenants," he continued. "About you." Her heart pounded. He flipped through a folder. "They say you're thorough," he read. "That you stay late sometimes to finish properly even when nobody's watching. That you clean behind things, not just around them." He looked up. "I didn't know that." Her voice was small. "You never asked," she said quietly, then bit her lip, afraid she'd gone too far. He didn't get angry. He looked surprised. "No," he admitted. "I didn't." He cleared his throat, uncomfortable with his own honesty. "We have a supervisor position opening on another site," he said. "More responsibility, a little more pay. You'd still clean, but you'd also check other people's work." Mara blinked. "Why me?" He hesitated. "Because you already act like the work matters," he said. "Might as well pay you closer to what that's worth." The raise wasn't huge. It didn't erase her problems. But it was the first time in a very long time that someone had said, "I see what you do," and it changes something. She left the office in a daze. Outside, the wind still cut through her coat. But for once, she didn't feel thin. She felt solid. The second question. One evening, long after the first pharmacy encounter, life crossed their paths again. It happened in the most unremarkable place. A bus. Mara and Lena sat near the back, grocery bags at their feet. The bus was crowded. The air smelled like wool and wet shoes and tired days. At the next stop, a man in a dark coat stepped on. He held the overhead bar. He didn't see them at first. He was thinking about another meeting, another report, another tired manager asking if we really had to keep the subsidies that high. Then Lena's voice pierced the noise. Soft, clear. "Mom!" Mara followed her gaze. She saw Daniel. So did Lena. Lena didn't see money, or power, or reports. She saw the man who had knelt to her level and listened to a question no one else wanted to answer. The words left her mouth before she could stop them. "Sir," he turned. That single word, same sharp little hook in it. He recognized her instantly. The hat was different. The coat was not the same, but the eyes were. He stepped closer. "Hello," he said gently. "We meet again." There was no dramatic music, no spotlight, just the hum of the bus engine and the soft squeak of brakes. Lena looked up at him with serious eyes. "Sir," she asked quietly, "do you still think about my mom when you make big decisions?" The bus went very still. People weren't trying to eavesdrop, but the question slipped into all the spaces between them. Mara flushed. "Lena," she whispered. "That's not." Daniel held up a hand slightly. He didn't smile it away. He didn't joke. He answered like she was a board member. "Yes," he said simply. "Ido." Lena frowned. "Really? Or just when you see us?" He swallowed. He could have lied. He could have said, "All the time," and nobody would have challenged him. Instead, he chose something harder. "Not enough," he admitted, "but more than before. And that's because of you." Lena considered that. Kids know the taste of honesty. She nodded slowly. "Okay," she said. That small "okay" landed deeper than applause. People behind them looked away, uncomfortable, softened, changed in ways they might never name. The bus lurched. Daniel looked at Mara. "How are you?" he asked. It wasn't small talk. She thought about giving the automatic answer. Fine. But she didn't. Stronger, she said instead. He nodded, relief in his eyes. Good. The bus stopped again. He needed to get off. As he moved toward the doors, Lena spoke one more time. Sir. He turned. She held his gaze like she was pinning something in place. Please don't stop changing things just because they're hard, she said. Adults do that sometimes. It wasn't an accusation. It was a warning, a gentle one. He let her words settle. I won't, he said. The doors hissed open. Cold air rushed in. He stepped onto the street with that promise pressed against his ribs like a weight he chose to carry. The slow shift. Over the next year, numbers moved. Not dramatically, not in a way that would impress headlines, but enough. There were fewer abandoned prescriptions, fewer notes about people leaving in pain, fewer patient refused due to cost entries. Some shareholders complained, some left. That was fine. Daniel had discovered something unsettling and freeing. Not all growth was worth it. He said as much in a board meeting. We built a system that treats suffering as a billing code, he said. I'd like to build one that treats it as a reason to act. A man in an expensive tie scoffed. This is sentimentality, he said. We can't fix every sad story. We're not responsible for how people live. Daniel didn't raise his voice. He simply replied, No, but we are responsible for what we make harder, and for what we look away from. He thought of Mara crying at the counter, of Lena clutching her hat, of all the times his money had pushed prices up in spreadsheets and pain up in real lives. If some investors couldn't live with lower margins in exchange for less invisible damage, he was prepared to let them go. He did, not all at once, not dramatically, quietly, like cleaning a wound. New walls. Mara's new job site was an office complex with glass walls and expensive furniture. She wore the same uniform. Her gloves were still thin. Her feet still ached by dawn. But she walked differently now. Not bowed, not resentful, just present. She noticed something strange. When she stopped apologizing for existing, people started seeing her as a person instead of background. Some didn't. Some always would look through her. But a few more glanced up and said, "Good night," like they meant it. One evening, she found a crooked framed picture leaning against a wall in the corridor. She stopped, straightened it, took a step back. It was such a small thing. But in that moment, she realized she'd been straightening crooked things her whole life. Systems, schedules, feelings, just never her own. She smiled faintly. Maybe it was her turn. A letter that doesn't get sent. Lena still wrote letters she didn't send. She had a notebook hidden between her mattress and the wall. On one page, in careful handwriting, "Dear Sir, I don't know your last name. Mom says some people's names open doors and some people's names open bills. Yours sounds like a door name. Thank you for opening one." On another, "Dear people who make rules, please remember we have to live inside them. If you were us, would you still think they are fair?" On a third, "Dear future me, I hope you don't have to ask strangers to see your mom. I hope they see her by themselves." She didn't show them to Mara. Not yet. Some truths are gifts you save for later. The meeting she doesn't know about. One rainy afternoon, Daniel sat in a plain conference room with 2 clinic directors, 3 pharmacists, and a nurse who looked like she hadn't slept properly since the last election. They weren't there for a performance. They were there to talk about something that never fit neatly into agendas: the difference between cost and value. The nurse spoke, voice tired but steady. "Do you know what it feels like?" she asked. "To walk into a room and tell someone their pain isn't severe enough for coverage?" She didn't wait for an answer. Ido. I've done it. Many times. Because those were the guidelines. She looked at him. I went home and threw up some nights. Daniel didn't try to comfort her with slogans. He didn't tell her she'd done her best. He said the only useful thing, I'm sorry we built anything that made you do that. Then he added, and we're going to stop. They discussed new thresholds, flexible adjustments, internal funds, legal risks. It was messy, complicated, imperfect. But throughout the entire meeting, whenever someone said, "This might be expensive," Daniel imagined Mara's face at the counter, Lena's question on the bus, and he replied, "Pain is already expensive. We're just deciding who pays." A small tradition. On the anniversary of that first night at the pharmacy, Mara didn't remember the date. Life had too many other numbers in it. Rent due, shift times, bus schedules. But Lena did. She waited until Mara was in the bathroom brushing her teeth. Then she took the orange bottle out of the cupboard. Not to worship it, not to be dramatic, just to look at it. There were fewer pills now. She turned it in her hands. Then she took a small piece of paper and taped it to the side. In wobbly handwriting, not a luxury, a bridge. She put it back. When Mara reached for it later, the note made her pause. She smiled. Lena pretended not to see. One last encounter. It was spring when they met one more time. No snow. No breath hanging in the air. Just a gray, slightly warm day when the city couldn't decide if it was done being cold. Mara had an appointment at the clinic's physiotherapy department. Something she never would have considered before. Too fancy, she would have said, for people with time. But the new program included a short rehab course for injuries that could improve. The therapist had kind eyes and serious instructions. "We teach the body it doesn't have to live in defense forever," she explained. Mara thought about more than her shoulder. After the session, she walked through the lobby, arm moving a little more freely. Lena sat on a bench outside with a book, feet swinging above the ground, backpack at her side. She looked up and beamed. "You're faster," she said. "A little," Mara replied. They turned to leave. The automatic doors slid open, and there he was, Daniel stepping out of a car. No entourage. No obvious markers of anything but a man in a coat with too much on his mind. They all stopped. For a moment, each of them saw the others not as characters in their own story, but as people in the same one. He walked over. "Hi," he said softly. "You look." He searched for the word. "Lighter." Mara laughed under her breath. "Not on the scales," she said. "But here." She tapped her chest. He nodded. "That's the important part." Lena watched them both. "Sir," she said. "Did they listen to you?" He exhaled. "Some did," he said. "Some didn't. Some pretended to. But we changed a few things." "Enough?" she asked. "I don't know," he answered honestly. "But more than before." She considered that. "I think," she said quietly, "you should keep being annoying." He blinked. "Annoying?" "Yeah," she nodded. "To people who forget other people." Mara covered her mouth to hide a smile. Daniel laughed, really laughed. "I can do that," he said. "I'm very good at annoying important people." "Good," Lena said. There was no hug, no dramatic music, just three people standing outside a clinic, sharing the kind of silence that feels like a promise. Not that things will be easy, but that they will not be ignored. A car horn sounded down the street. A bus sighed as it pulled over. Life moved. So did they. Later that night, in his apartment, Daniel sat at his desk. He opened a drawer. Inside was the notebook where he'd written countless lines no one would ever read. He turned to a clean page. For once, he didn't write numbers. He wrote a sentence. Power is not measured by how many people obey you, but by how many people suffer less because you existed. He stared at it. Then he underlined less, not none. He wasn't naive. He couldn't fix everything, but he could tilt some things. He closed the notebook. On his fridge, held by a small magnet shaped like a pill bottle, was a piece of paper. A child's messy writing. Sir, my mom says pain is not free. Please don't make it more expensive. He'd read it so many times the edges had curled. Tonight he read it again, and instead of guilt, he felt something else. Direction. Elsewhere. At the same time, in a much smaller apartment across the city, Mara sat at her own table. The walls were still cracked. The radiator still clanked. But there was one new thing. Her shoulders were not hunched from constant guarding. Lena lay on the floor nearby, drawing. Her tongue stuck out in concentration, a small habit from when she'd been much younger. "What are you making?" Mara asked. "A picture," Lena said without looking up. "Of who?" She answered simply. "Of what it looks like when people finally see each other." Mara didn't ask to see. Some art is meant to be finished in privacy. She leaned back in her chair. For years, every night had ended the same way, with fear counting the hours until morning. Now, for the first time, the night felt like something else. A pause, not a threat. She closed her eyes. Her shoulder didn't scream. Her mind didn't race as fast. She whispered to the room, "We're still here," not as a complaint, as a quiet victory. No moral, just this. The system did not turn into paradise. Some people still walked out of pharmacies with empty hands. Some managers still chose profit over humanity. Some boardrooms still applauded the wrong metrics. But fewer, and sometimes fewer, is the first honest miracle. A girl asked a question in a place where questions are usually swallowed. A man with money decided numbers weren't the only thing that mattered. A woman who had learned to apologize for every breath started to live like she was allowed to take up space. No hero, no saint, no savior, just people. One carrying too much responsibility, one carrying too much pain, one carrying too much wisdom for her age. You won't read about them in the news. There won't be a statue or a scholarship in their names. But somewhere, in a small apartment where the radiator still knocks, a little girl is falling asleep without listening for her mother's stifled sobs. Somewhere, in a quiet office, a man is crossing out one more policy that hurts invisibly. Somewhere, in a pharmacy, a hand reaches out with a bottle and says, "It's okay, we'll figure it out. You don't have to be strong alone." And maybe that's all this story was ever trying to say. The world doesn't change when someone richer gives someone poorer a miracle. It changes when people who were never meant to see each other finally do, across a counter, on a bus, under a tired fluorescent light, and decide, quietly, to carry the weight together.